Welcome everyone, this is Pineleaf Needles and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO, and here at LOTRO Players. And this week we have with us Andang,
Hey, everybody.
Atheros,
Hail and well met, friends.
Draculetta,
Hey, everybody.
Rexwolf,
Hello, Lotro.
Citrus,
Hello.
and please everyone welcome our guest for tonight, Bloodborne.
Hello.
So
Welcome.
Bloodborne, could you tell us A, who you are, how you got into LOTRO, and how you got involved in the LOTRO community?
Well, I'm Bloodborne. So I mean, that's kind of it. So I've been playing Lotro for about 7 years. I didn't quite get into it right at the get-go, mainly because I didn't have a machine that would play it. It was given to me as a birthday present, and I had to wait several months to play it. It was quite depressing. But it was one of those things where once I got the machine to play it, fired it up, had no clue what I was doing, and was hooked ever since.
So you're saying, it's my birthday present.
Yes, very much so.
Wow.
That was semi-terrifying.
You
Semi?
have no idea how badly I want to do the voice right now. I just
You
don't
can-
want to do it.
You can go ahead, Blood.
No. Too soon for that.
Okay.
Maybe. So, yeah, I mean, as far as me getting into LOTRO, it was really just that. It was something I've always been a fan of, Middle-earth and the books and other games. I just really couldn't play any of them. So this was my first real venture into Middle-earth, and I was, like I said, I was just instantly hooked on being able to see places that I read about and just being able to go, seeing even Bree or Weathertop for the very first time. It's just, wow. It
Yeah.
was such an enjoyable experience, and still happens to this day where I go someplace, and even if I've been there before, it's still a wow experience for me.
Yes, I remember the first time seeing the hill.
Yeah.
Which one?
The hill.
The hill.
The hill.
You do have to be specific because there are many.
Yes,
I
but
know which one you're referring to. but there's
yes.
everyone.
Rivendell's probably the most popular, first sight shock thing. That's the one I read a lot about on the forums when people walk up into that valley and they just see everything below you.
Yeah.
Well, that's
it's-
because of what you had to go through in order to get there.
Yeah. As a low-level
Yeah.
player, there is so much you have to do just to get to Rivendell the first time, unless you go to Evendim and then you go to Rivendell, in which case it's very underwhelming at that point. But
Especially
For-
if you're in the form of a chicken.
All right. Then how'd you get involved with the community?
It was actually kind of a joke at first, to be perfectly honest. A friend of mine from work, we were, both avid gamers, and we were talking about, people who stream, and we were looking at, we were just browsing through Twitch one day, and we're like, how do these people have this many views? I don't understand, because there's people that were, they were playing a particular game. It was an older game. It was they were particularly bad at the game, and just going from there, and they would have like 50,000 viewers. So I'm like, this is very intriguing to me. So, at first, I just kind of did it, and I went through all these different iterations of trying to broadcast, and it was awful. Trying to use Slash Media Live encoder, and trying to use this program, that program, trying this bit rate, that bit rate, and ultimately it was all just awful. So then I built a new machine and kind of went from there, and I was able to kind of crank things up a little bit. And so I finally got to the point where I was saying, well, if I'm playing, what's to stop me from just clicking that button that says go live? And so I just started doing that and started talking and started getting people following me and liking what I was doing and giving me donations. So I was like, this is, I guess, how it starts. And then so here I am now.
Awesome.
Kind of weird to think a year ago I wasn't doing any of this, and now I'm doing a lot. It's quite a drastic change.
All right. Anything you would like to add before we go into the news?
Well, if anybody has not seen any of my streams, it is quite simply just twitch.tv/Bloodborne. Kind of the way I do my streams is I kind of follow the basic community guidelines from LOTRO. So just, I mean, what you would expect. You know, if anybody is rude or anything like that, I'm going to kick you out of the stream. But for the most part, anything that anyone wants to talk about in chat, I'm totally game for. I welcome all that stuff, and we talk about stuff in chat and in the stream. So I look forward to having people in there.
Out of curiosity, how did you come up with your name?
That's a very good question. Been a long time. It's so when I created my first character, which was my champion, I was looking at the name generator and kind of the lore behind names, and it was an elf, and one of the parts to the name was born, and I was like, okay, well, I can work with that, and then so I just started because I tried the random generator for, like, I'm not kidding, 10 solid minutes, and I was like, these are awful. I need something that's just gonna stick, and so I just kind of started working what sounds good with that, and I landed on blood, and I tried the other spellings and other spellings of born and whatnot, which I'm glad I didn't end up with that spelling now that it's going to be a game, because that would have been a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
So luckily I have BLUD, and so it kind of stuck, and now it's just everybody kind of calls me Blood, because all of my characters in every game that I play, with the exception of Bert on Brandywine, my name starts with Blood, so...
All right. Then let's head into the game news. And the big news this week is that they have released Update 15, Gondor Aflame. And Etheros, what is in Update 15?
Well, some stuff that's broken, and then a lot of stuff that should be there but isn't.
Can you be more specific?
Well, the main features they're coming out with is the new epic book. So there's that. There's the new level 100, 101 zone for Central Gondor, which is about the same size as Western Gondor. There's a new epic battle, which is supposedly offensive. It's just solo duo at the moment. I think they said they're doing a fellowship version, but it's going to be patched in later. And they also released a little thing called the Beyonding.
a minor little addition in there.
I would like to note, though, that you mentioned that the update's called Gondor Flame. I did not even learn what this update was called until like the day before it was going to come to life.
Yeah, they didn't announce it
same.
until the day before.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like sort of lapse in just saying what it is.
Normally, when they do the press preview, they say what the update is. And so normally, at least a week ahead of time, we know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, I think
It
I
seems-
heard the name more about a week in advance is when I first heard the name.
Where did you hear
I
that
think a
from?
lot of people were calling it Dawnless Day for a while. and
Yeah,
well,
it was known as
that's
the
the name of
Dawnless
the
Day.
epic book.
It would make sense to call the epic book the same as the update.
That's how
That's
they normally
also-
do it, yeah.
Well-
That's also what Rowan said when he put his producer letter out. He didn't say that's what it was called, but that's the term he used.
Yep,
It was very unusual.
it was.
Yes,
Actually, I think it sounds
I
better
do
than Gondor
remember their.
Flames.
See,
I
so
think the
Gondor-
other way around. I think Gondor Flame sounds better, personally. Just because
like
of
Dawnless
the
Day.
actual amount of fire that's in this zone.
All right. So therefore, I noticed you also put in your article curious additions.
Yes, they also put this strange thing in that I didn't even know they'd done until, well, when they added it to this patch note. They've added a restriction to all new free and I believe premium.
No,
Maybe
no,
not
premiums
free,
don't
just
have this
free characters.
restriction. Free.
Okay, just free-to-play characters. When you create a character and you log into the game, you cannot use any user-created channels. You cannot use the will chat for about 3 hours of gameplay, or you can just AFK for 3 hours. Either way, and assuming that this is to combat trolls just getting banned and remaking new accounts and such.
That
But it's
is
kind
probably
of
the reason. Or
just kind of strange that they did it this late in the game. I can only assume that they did this in response to usage of the will chat
I think it's
in
direct.
particular.
I think it's
Yeah.
direct response to the world chat, and honestly, I think it definitely needs it. Based on the world chat, I think that this is good. I can definitely see how it could make a lot of players feel kind of left out for 3 hours. But the fact that it's only 3 hours, it's not too much of a penalty, but I think it'll be just enough to keep some of the trolls away.
Also, a little note that while it's not in these patch notes, apparently it has been confirmed that the Hypebeald quests are now require 1 token per completion, so it's a lot quicker to do that now.
Might actually go finish
Makes
it now.
sense.
yeah, yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's good, I guess.
Well, it depends on whether or not you were interested in seeing, because there is a nice closing instance to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right.
And what did they leave out at those?
Well, the LI update mainly,
Mm-hmm.
as well as obviously the Fellowship version of the Epic Battle, which is they said was going to be coming. They just seem to be cutting a lot of stuff
And
back.
I guess the instruments from the music system.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, but the entrance for the music system, I thought that was a long shot to be when they first announced it.
I did
Not
as
to
well,
mention
but
the-
then
I
they
know,
confirmed
yeah, I
it,
know you
so
thought
I
that
don't know.
you thought it was more certain later on, but I thought it was still a long shot. So that
Yeah.
one was no huge
Still though,
surprise.
they've cut a lot with this update.
Not
Well,
to
I don't
mention
know. I
certain.
have yet to see an update in LOTRO that I could think of where everything they thought they were going to get in managed to get in.
Yeah, but the 6-man instance is a pretty big deal. And so is
Let's not
some of the other
forget that this
things.
update was originally meant to have a level cap increase, the LI update, and a full-size epic battle.
Right.
They've cut so much from this update already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
Not
they
to
had.
mention working components for
But
some of
to
the stuff
be
they
fair,
didn't
on the other side, they were originally only going to have the Bjorning start at level 50, and then now it starts level 1 and has a whole new
That-
starter area and all that.
That
Yeah,
is true.
I do think though that well, I am glad that they did make the change for the Bjorning. I think because they also cut stuff and some other things that, it's not good to have this change in message every couple weeks on what's actually going to be coming into the game.
So, Ending, let me ask you, would you rather they have postponed the entire update until the start of the year?
Yeah.
Because that's what they used to do.
I think that if they could have released the Bjorning as its own update and then left the rest of the update till next year, I think that would have been a much better way to do it.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah,
were
when
trying
we
to
did,
they were trying to keep their promise of getting the update out before the end of the year, but
Which
to
is
do so
good.
they just had to cut a bunch of it out.
when we did our video, I said I think they should have waited until 2015 for this update, and a lot of people commented and said that that was ridiculous and it was like a stupid idea. But I still, now that the update is live, I still believe that more than ever that they should have waited, taken the time to test things more.
Well,
I
but I mean, they
don't-
are going to have a fairly sizable update at the end of this year or next year now, with that stuff being added in. So by that point, it'll all be the
While-
same. But it's just right now, it feels like there's stuff missing.
While pushing it to next year, I think personally to me seems a little too far to push it back. I think they could give this at least maybe 2 or 3 weeks, at least get the Fellowship version of the Epic Battle in.
Yeah, but in
That, at least,
general,
I think
though,
they could do.
December games and updates just don't sell. So that would be a very bad decision, especially when
Well, I mean, it would
LOTRO's
still
under
launch in
financial
November.
issues as well.
They would still have much of November to do stuff in. I
The
think they
problem
could
is
just, like,
in
2 or
the
3 weeks
US,
at least.
once you get to the last half of November,
Yeah.
all bets are off
Yeah.
basically.
As
Hmm.
soon as you hit Thanksgiving, boom, that's
It's all
everybody's
downhill.
everyone's focused on Christmas shopping.
And the big AAA titles as well. And so
Right.
usually the big game gets a ton of sales, but then everything else doesn't for the rest of the year, essentially.
I don't know. I just think at least 2 weeks would have been enough to maybe fix some of the other problems, which I imagine Panny's going to cover next.
Right, so let's go into the patch problems and Sithrith, what were those about?
Well, I'm sure Drac actually can talk about this a little bit more, but basically, many people were having issues just logging into the game once Update 15 went live, and they posted some suggested uh, actions people could try to get in game. It did work for some people, but I'm sure Drac can tell you all about his issues that he had with this update.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but their whole DirectX distributables somehow got messed up in this update. It was even messing up other games I have that use DirectX.
Wow.
I had to basically, it took me 2.5 days to patch, and I had to reinstall LOTRO like 3 times and reinstall the full DirectX distributable package 3 times, even to get it to work.
Oh, I should note that in DDO, I get a message on DirectX and a prompt from my operating system every single time I've launched it in this last year.
And that started with LOTRO too, and I'm not sure what
Yeah.
Turbine's doing something different with how it calls on DirectX, I think. And like I said, I tried everything what they said in the forums, and I finally looked and saw what the error was, and I thought, well, I wonder what would happen if I would uninstall DirectX totally, and install it and install the .NET files again, and then it started working. So I don't know what they did, and their major fix, and I use that with air quotes that you can't see, was to either run it as administrator or change your proxy settings.
I always run as administrator since I don't have a closed
Which, personally, coming from an IT background, you never, ever want to run anything as administrator.
You don't want to require people to have to do that.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to require people to do that, especially if they're on a system that requires people to log in and stuff like that.
So I don't know what happened. I was just one of the unlucky ones. I know some people had problems, but they weren't quite as bad as mine. But something went way wrong somewhere.
Probably a bad roll of the RNG.
Probably.
See, does anybody understand the music system issues? Because I've heard a lot of role players and musicians who are really complaining about that, and I thought that they said that they weren't going to do the music update this round. So
No,
how
what
did
they said they
No,
were going
they-
to do the update, but they weren't going to add in the instruments. But a lot of people are upset because
Oh.
they were telling Turbine constantly on the beta that, hey, it's not in the place it needs to be, still not in the place it needs to be, and then it goes to live, and I guess it's still not good. There's still a lot of stuff that's
Yeah.
just broken in it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was scheduled for a rehearsal today, and since my internet was down, obviously I wasn't at the rehearsal, so I don't know how the music sounded. So that would be my first chance of hearing.
I've heard that certain instruments, certain notes are flat or sharp or have
Yeah.
weird squeaks.
Yeah.
So
and-
I know that there's a squeak on a certain note on the clarinet, and since I play the clarinet in the orchestra, I would have been interested in knowing what note is this that's going.
There's also volume issues between instruments because
Yep.
Alina posted a YouTube video out there that shows two instruments playing side by side, and one you could barely hear because of the other. So there's a lot of problems, I guess, and people are pretty upset.
The thing that you guys mentioned earlier about them asking Turbine over and over, it telling them it's not ready, they should not put it in with this update. It kind of mirrors pretty much this whole update in a nutshell. Is
Yeah,
the fact
and
that
I mean,
like-
the fact is they've made the people who like group content not very happy. They've made the people
Even just
who
roleplay group content.
they've made the people who do role-playing stuff not happy. Those are the two big groups in MMOs usually. And especially in LOTRO, the roleplay community is huge, and to, be messing with the music system is not a good thing at the same time as delaying the 6-man. It just, I don't know, it doesn't seem good.
Here's the thing: having like launch problems like this on its own is, like, I'm not going to say it's not a problem because it is a problem, but it's not like a huge catastrophe thing. Usually, like, it's going to happen at some point because MMOs are that complicated. But when your players are telling you that your update isn't ready, that these things are not well polished yet, and then you have these problems, whether or not they're actually related to the update itself not being ready or not, whether giving it another month or so would have made these problems happen anyway, it doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and the other
It
thing
looks
is,
like
in the past, they've been good about being like, okay, we realize that this isn't ready. Let's push it back. They pushed back Riders Rohan. They pushed back Helm's Deep. So why
Rise of
didn't they
Rohan
do it this time?
especially was a very good case of that, because I
Yeah.
remember back when like everyone was telling them to push it back. At the same time as them pushing it back, they also lifted the NDA. So
Right.
instead of Turbine telling people, yeah, we need to push this back because it's not ready, you had players coming to tell other players that the content had potential, but it wasn't ready yet, and that was a lot more convincing.
And people had
than-
already paid for that update. And people
Yeah.
haven't paid for this update yet, so it seems weird that
I
they
think
Well,
people would have
the thing
been
is,
okay with
in the
this.
year of Riders of Rohan, there were no other game MMO expansions coming out. And so there was really no competition for what LOTRO was doing that year. And so they could
Because
release that update any day of the year,
I thought-
and they would have
I
been
thought
fine.
Rift's expansion
wasn't
came
that
out
when
year.
yeah.
Yeah,
think
Rift-
Wasn't that the
Rift
year
is-
the Panda expansion for World of
That
Warcraft came
was,
out?
which was a big flop, and so and LOTRO, most people thought it was going to be a flop going into it, and
Yeah, I thought
so
it was a joke when I heard about
and
it.
so it wasn't an issue, and I guess Rift did have an expansion that actually did pretty well, but just in general, the MMO community wasn't having that many updates as opposed to other years, and so LOTRO was able to basically release their update whenever they wanted to from a marketing perspective.
It's
All
going to be
right.
interesting to see what's in the hotfix this coming week.
Yeah.
Right, we will see about that. Which reminds me that there is a scheduled server downtime for Monday, December 10th for a hot fix. There will be
Isn't that
patch notes,
November
of course.
10th?
Yes, it is November 10th.
Atharos?
Sorry, what?
You wrote the show notes this week.
Did I? I wasn't
Okay,
paying
that's right.
attention.
Yes, November 10th, not December 10th. Please ignore the show notes and read the article instead.
I didn't write the article, did I?
No, the article was
No,
written
the
by
article has the correct
Draxoletta, who
title.
knows the actual date of the
I was
downtime.
gonna
fair
say
enough.
I put November in the article. Thank you.
Fair
Alright.
enough.
Anyway.
I will accept when I make a mistake.
All right,
It
November
happens.
10th, there will be patch notes during the download time, and I will presume they're going to be taking care of, hopefully, some of the things that people are complaining about, but it won't be any of the big stuff because I'm sure the big stuff is waiting for a point update at some point in the near future.
Can we take bets now on how far out they're going to go and not hit the noon deadline?
They've
And
actually done pretty good lately.
Yeah, they've done pretty well,
Yeah.
but honestly, there's so much going on at Turbine that I don't think there's anything that you'd want to take a bet on right now.
If I'm
All
gonna hope
right.
for anything, it's that they give themselves, like, intentionally give themselves a really late deadline so that they don't need to extend it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about. All right, we've talked about the little problems in getting logged on, or some big problems if you're Draculetta, and what are there, and of course the hot fix that's coming up. But what are your first impressions on the stuff that is in there?
For me personally, I was very pleasantly surprised by the story. I felt that Western Gondor had a nice kind of start, but it didn't really, it just set up a lot of things. With Central Gondor, you come in and those things that you set up, you go straight into the action. And I am really enjoying the story so far. I think it definitely brings more tension and just more drama into the area. The Beorning is, while it hasn't been tested for higher levels, is really good 1 through 50, and so I think that they did a great job with that from just my first impressions so far. and the landscape's pretty good. The update as a whole, what is there, seems to be pretty good aside from the epic battle I've heard from people. But that's not my impression, so I won't give it. Atharos, you've probably done the most of Update 15. What do you think so far?
Well, I have completed pretty much all of the main side story and the epic. I've also did 2 runs of the epic battle because my computer crashed the first time. I will say the Central Gondor itself, it looks great. It's very bleak, which I think a few people might have a problem with long term, same way people have problems questing in Angmar. But yeah, it looks great. As you mentioned, I think the way you dive straight into the story we've already had set up is pretty much exactly what it is. We're fighting a lot of the same enemies, obviously, but it is carrying on the story.
Yeah, what I
Um,
like is that the first area that you do all the stuff for Western Gondor, you actually pick up the story there and have probably half an hour of questing or so, and then you go to the next area because something happens that causes you to go there plot-wise, and I thought that was really nice to make the break be before we move so that we can have that epic finish at the start of this update.
Yeah, and obviously we're not going to spoil anything, but I think also that particular thing, they did a good job setting up the villain or villains for this update. And I'm not going to spoil, but they do a lot of they set up these people or these places, and then they actually do a conclusion on them. And that's something I've had a problem with in older LOTRO regions where they have these plot points, but they don't finish them.
Yeah.
Kind of like, okay,
Like
you did a bit to help,
Rohan,
but you have not.
Eastern
I was thinking
Rohan,
really,
for example.
I was thinking really old zones like pre-revamp Troll Shores, Misty Mountains, and stuff, where they have these plots, but they don't really tie the whole region together well enough. So it sort of feels like you did a bit, but you didn't really leave your impact as much as you would have liked. I will say that the epic itself is very good. There's definitely a lot more stuff happening than the previous one, obviously, because they're setting up stuff. The epic battle, I've already made my feelings clear about. I still think it's kind of a glorified skirmish, not to my liking. It worked in terms of bugginess. There was only a few side missions that just didn't trigger or would not finish when I actually completed the requirements for it. But aside from that, yeah, it was just kind of easy and dull for me.
I had quite a few that would not finish. Usually it was the last one as the
Yes,
as the
they
army
are
was
in
coming
the
in.
they're in the known issues too. Those something we'll mention is the difficulty of the landscape is a lot higher than significantly higher than anything else in LOTRO, and a fair amount higher than West Gondor. Some of these mobs, like signatures, they will destroy you. They
Oh,
destroyed
yes.
me, and I'm a Lawmaster, which is one of the most powerful classes in the game right now. I could spam heals, and they would still almost bring me down. You get 2 or 3 mobs on you, and they can bring you down very fast as a squishy.
2 or 3 signatures? 2 or 3
2 or 3
signatures
normal
should bring you
mobs.
down. Oh, 2 or
2 or
3
3
normal mobs.
normal
Okay.
mobs.
There's that spider in Central Gondor that's right
All
outside
right.
of Ething.
Let's not talk about
Oof.
specific mobs at the moment.
Oof. I'll just put
I
it
know
this way.
which
I'll just put it this
Yeah,
way. There is a mob
one.
that
Actually,
I was
something-
riding past to do a quest, and I did not even see it until I was one shot for 33,000.
I assume you're talking about the roaming enemies.
Yes.
Yes, that is something they have put in. They're basically rare nemesis or arch nemesis mobs with hundreds of thousands. Some have over about 2 million health that are part of a series of quests that you get just in the different regions. And yeah, if you're not on a mount, they will kill you.
Have
If you
you-
are on a mount, you pretty much come around in circles forever.
Have you found how they're different than warbands yet?
They don't appear on the map for one thing, so you have to actually look out for them. They don't have a specific spot where they always are. They sort of roam around a certain area, but you have to actually look up for them.
Kind of like
They're
old
also
shard
part-
droppers.
Yeah, pretty much. They're also part of quests that they are apparently repeatable, but you have to sort of fulfill requirements to even unlock the quest to do them in the first place.
All right then. Any other?
Um, One thing I will mention is I haven't actually played the Beyonding, but I have been listening in on Will Chat while I've been playing through the zone. And from what I've read on there, people seem quite enthusiastic about it. There's a lot of people playing the Beyonding, and there's a lot of people talking about the class, like who haven't actually bought whether they should buy it. Some are actually grinding turbine points to get it. So I think that actually is encouraging that there is some excitement, some actual discussion about the class. So people seem at least interested in it.
And I have a theory about that. I think because this is the first new thing that they've introduced that hasn't been broken in a long time. And also, we haven't had a new class in a long time. And so I think the combination of the two, where the new class is really, really well done, it just makes people super excited about it.
Well, and also people who probably haven't been back in the old starter areas for years are going back and
Yeah.
and having that nostalgia feel with the new class too. That's kind of neat.
Assuming this new class does well, do you think Turbine will do another new class, or are we beyond new classes?
I don't think there's a need for one.
I don't think there is either.
Well, I
don't
didn't think
think
there
there
was
was
a
a need
need
for the
for a Bjorning either, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but people have been talking about the Bjorning for years, so a lot of people, of course, were thinking, when people were first suggesting, especially when they hinted a new class, I think some people were thinking, oh, you got to be I know, I think I said that myself. It's like, nah.
Yeah, no new class in 2014. Remember, no new
Yep.
Right.
class.
They said
But
they
it
had
did
like
work.
they said they had like 20 or whatever class ideas that they had. You'd
I
think
still
at
wanna know
least
what those
one
are.
of them would be, other than the Bjorning, would be a viable one.
Well, we'll see. The
there's
Bjorning seems to be working well enough.
So nobody on this call wants a new class, that's for sure.
I mean,
Um,
I would get it and level it if it came out, because that's what I do. But I don't need to level another 100.
Yeah.
Zinger brings
I'm-
up a good point in the chat that it's pretty popular not just because it's something new and shiny, but a lot of the new things that have been introduced lately have mostly only really affected end game players. Sure, epic battles you can start them at level 10, but let's be honest here, level 10s are not very effective in epic battles.
Yeah.
Whereas a Bjorning is obviously it's a new class. You play it at level 1, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
There's one like final little thing I will mention in fairness of counterbalancing the stuff I said it was actually good. When you're doing quest instances in the game, if you die in them in Central Gondor, you go a very long way away. They seem to have, for some reason, hardly any res circles in them.
Yeah.
So it takes a very long time to get back. And for some reason, the instance keeps going after you leave it. So when I was doing one of these final instances, that when they really like tie up pretty much the whole zone's story, it completed without me. So I missed out on like the last half of that instance, and I was a little peeved, to say the least. Just saying,
Wow.
add some red circles, and if you're going to do those instances, make you retreat to the beginning of it, at least.
Yeah, you
Please,
reminded
for
me
the
of
love of-
you reminded me of that Mirkwood instance where the last one in Mirkwood Landing, where the number of I've died half the time I do that when I die in the
Oh,
middle
yeah,
of that
that one.
instance, and then I get there, I get all the way back to it, and I usually get back there just in time for it. It is either failed or completed by the time I get there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
a
there's
lot
some-
further away here. That it's literally across an entire zone that you have to go back to some of these instances, and it's ridiculous.
I'm seeing some people in the chat mentioning that Western Gondor and West Rohan have these problems too. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be
I s-
surprised, but I think the reason I wouldn't have noticed is because those zones were just generally not as challenging, so I probably wouldn't have died.
And the
That's probably
instances
true.
especially weren't as challenging.
Yeah, and in this new zone, a lot of them are very tricky. You can very easily get overwhelmed if you're not careful. So
So bring your
there's
eight.
my rant done.
All right. Then let's go to the store sales. Draculetta.
Free sample of the week through November 13th is a sturdy steel key. You get one key per account. Use coupon code 4LOOT, and that is the number 4LOOT. Once again, one per account, so choose wisely. 25% off Virtues and Virtue Bundles, Trade Slots, and the Skill and Slayer Deed Boost.
All right, then. Then let's go into the site news, and we'll begin with a little poll concerning will you buy the Bjorning? Or I guess we'll also include as a yes those who have already purchased it. So therefore, let's first do a quick roundtable here. Is there anyone here who has already bought it?
I have.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I have.
Yep.
Wait,
No.
anyone here who hasn't bought it yet?
I haven't
No, I
got
have
around to it yet. I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to get through the new zone first.
Okay, so your priority is the new zone because you have a playthrough for it.
Yeah.
Yes, very well. I guess that's logical. All right,
I'm-
then.
Probably not gonna buy it, period, because I just don't think I'm invested enough in the game right now that I would level any character from scratch all the way up to level 100. So for me, it'd be kind of a waste of money.
All right. So that's all right. So we have one person who says no, one says probably will, and then the rest of us have already purchased it. So then, what are the results of the poll?
Well, Pineleaf, this is actually our most voted poll that we have ever had on LOTRO Players. There were 496 votes to this poll, and 47% said yes, they will buy the Bjorning class at 1,000 turbine points. And then 27% said maybe with a sale, 15% said no, and 11% said maybe. So a lot of people, if you count the maybes as some of them actually doing it, over 50% of the people that were in this poll are going to buy the Bjorning class. That's crazy.
Maybe that's one reason they will consider another class afterwards then.
And that's kind of where I was getting at. I think that the Bjorning will probably be successful enough based on what I've seen in chat and some other things that maybe in a year or two, right before you get to Mordor and things like that, there might be a new class.
I could see a new class maybe post Ring going in.
Yeah,
I could see a new one after that.
Mm-hmm.
The cleanup crew.
Yes.
All
Legendary brooms.
right. Legendary.
Oh my
brooms.
Barnabas is asking for predictions. I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we know our track record with
No.
that.
No,
Well-
no, our track record was too poor on that score.
I mean, as we said before, even with the Bjorning in mind, we didn't really know of any other classes that there could be. So, I mean, I'm sure Turbine's pretty creative, but they got most of it covered, I think.
All right, very well. Then let's go into the Lotro Academy posted episode 99.
What?
The course.
LOTRO Academy is releasing episodes? It's been forever, Pineleaf.
Well, yes, we released an episode 99, which are the core stats, where we went back and took another look at the course since the things have changed over the years. And what I mean by the core stats are might, vitality, agility, will, and fate. And we looked over them and see how they affect play and how you should look into them. So that's number 99. And other episodes we had were for Lotro Players Adventures, which had episode 36, Menacing Mirkwood.
That's right, Pineleaf. We did a raid and discovered how much we hate light bulbs.
Mhm.
Yes, so the light bulbs were menacing.
They are very menacing. Mirkwood was named after the light bulbs there, I'm pretty sure. It's all the light bulbs' fault in that silly raid.
Wait, I don't know. I wouldn't
What?
call a
That
place
makes no
Mirkwood based
sense.
on light bulbs.
It is, because of those silly pets that make you run everywhere. They're the cause of all the troubles in Mirkwood. There's no other logical
Okay.
explanation.
All right, then we'll go on to Forgotten Lotro lore, the Battle of Forhel. And in this case, we're talking about the update where we added the North Cold region, and they have these battle zones where, similar to what you have up in Evendim in Annuminus, and what you try to get in order to do them. And I'm not too sure I've ever attempted to get one of those battle zones in Forhel. Does anyone actually attempt to get them? Or is that why it's forgotten lore?
I think that's why it's forgotten lore. Almost nobody does these, and you never really see it flip hands either. It's always kinda there.
It's always kind of there. Yes, there have been I remember
One
one time I went near a couple of them to complete a deed so that I could get some virtue I was working on at the time.
One thing that they actually were going to put in Florcal at the beginning was actually make it to where the player character had to make it to fire every so often, or they'd start losing health.
Mm-hmm.
And then that never made it into the final game, or it got taken out afterwards.
Yeah, we just got stuck with the debuff
Yeah,
for
with that.
being in the cold.
But they made this huge deal, like you're gonna have to wear warmer clothes, and there's gonna be like all these different things you do, and they're gonna have like stats to make it so you can survive longer. And I really wish that that was still in the game, because I think that that adds a level of realism that would be nice in some of these wintry zones, especially one this far north.
Is this Lotro or is
It's a-
this Don't Starve?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be to that level. I mean,
I
I
think
think it'd just
maybe
be
at the
nice
time
to
when that
have.
was-
I think it'd just be nice to have a fairly large debuff, but not to the point where like you're gonna die eventually. Just make it be a lot more impactful, and you know, if you wear the appropriate clothing, then you have less worry about it.
All right.
Well, the thing is, like, when that was a new zone, sure, but I think, like, now at this point, looking back, it'd just be really, really annoying for, like,
Yeah.
nobody would go to quest there because nobody would want to have to get, like, special armor just to quest for, like, what, 4 or 5 levels.
Yeah, I think
And
the
then
way they
leave.
could solve that though is just give you special armor at the start for each of your classes.
I
But
guess.
Yeah. All
but
right. Then it
that,
sort of
that
makes it entirely thing silly. And people
Yeah.
will be comparing it to Radiance then.
after the
Mhm.
fact, yes, but when when it came out, Radiance wasn't around, so they didn't have to worry about that.
All
But,
right. Now, speaking
oh
of
well.
appropriate clothing, Zithrid, what is the clothing for the Bjorning?
Well, that was a pretty good segue. It kind of faltered at the end, so I'll give you like a 7 out of 10 for that. So I made some outfits based on the Bjorning trait lines, or at least 2 of them anyway. I made a outfit called the Roar for the yellow trait line of the Bjorning, and I made a outfit called the Hide for the blue trait line of the Bjorning. The Roar is a purple kind of outfit. It's got like a skirt kind of thing because the yellow line is kind of more support role, and it seemed kind of reminiscent of maybe, I don't know, lore masters or druids or some kind of class like that. And the outfit for the hide is mostly green themed. It uses some Rohan armor since the men of Dale and the men of Rohan were once ancestors, and so Bjornings, I reasoned, probably have similar dress to men of Dale and whatever. Also, because when I made these outfits, the Bjorning wasn't actually in game yet, so that was the thing. And the hide outfit is much more obviously armored because the hide trait line is the Bjorning tanking line, so obviously heavy armor is a good idea. So yeah, try those out on Bjornings.
All right then. Then our Lotro video highlight for this week is the stay-at-home Hobbit and Andang. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, well, this was a video that was created for the Who's the Biggest Lord of the Rings Online Fan contest done by Turbine. And the Stay-at-Home Hobbit was one of the videos that came as a result of that. And basically, it's a guy that, because the whole goal of this was proving that you're the biggest LOTRO fan, and this guy kind of showed that you can be in the Shire and just be doing stuff for your entire time in the game and still, be enjoying the game and having a ton of fun. And he goes through this in a really comedic way, and there's a lot of really nice jokes that also even sometimes are like just because of the camera work it becomes a joke. So um, if you want to find out why you should stay a ton of time in the Shire, or you just want to be entertained, this is a pretty good video to do so.
All right, thank you. And we also have Tim Hedden, who is continuing his The Family Line series with part 17, The Old Veteran. So if you're following the story, make sure you see the latest episode of that. And any comments on that? Then
This has been a pretty long-running series, and it's still getting better and better each episode. It is awesome, and I hope a lot of people keep reading through it because it's just a lot of good stuff that's going on, and it's really cool to have these kind of fan-made things, and we've already mentioned that it's in Rohan, and so that's pretty cool. It just has a lot of things that the normal fan fiction kind of stuff doesn't have, and I really am enjoying the series.
right. Then we'll go on to Brax's pick of the week. What's going on this week?
Well, shout out to Zinger for pointing me towards this site because this is a site called departmentofstrategery.com, and it is formerly LOTRO Strategery. For those of you who've been around a while, you probably remember that site. And I remember LOTRO Strategery. I didn't realize that they had changed. But they're putting some pretty neat guides and stuff and videos and stuff out there now again. So I wanted to point out one of them, which is a fairly timely one called Explorer Deeds and Warbands of Central Gondor. Looks like they took a forum post or some kind of a post, but they put maps to it. So if you're looking for to complete the Explorer Deeds or looking for warbands in the new region, this is a very nice kind of graphical display of where everything's located. If you don't, if you're not into the exploring around and looking for it yourself, and you just want to know which way to go, there's coordinates and maps showing where all of the locations are. So, so we're talking about the deeds are called Central Gondor, Camps of the Enemies, Central Gondor Under Siege, and then there's a Warbands map. And then there's one called Legacy of Peligreer. It looks so there's some things around Peligreer that you're supposed to find as well, it looks like. So I haven't gotten this far in the content, so I'm guessing on a little bit of this, but it looks like it's going to be really handy for when I get there.
Okay, then. And then let's go into news beyond LOTRO. And first of all, we have the official trailer for The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies.
Yes, finally, we do.
I suppose it would
You
help
do.
if I unmuted things.
Most likely.
Ah, all right.
So yeah, there's this new Hobbit trailer. Finally got an actual trailer, although it wasn't actually much more than I think 20 seconds longer than the teaser trailers, so not that great. But it is pretty epic, lots of epic music. There's dwarves, there's elves, there's wizards, there's bats that are bred for war, apparently.
I laughed.
Bats in the books.
Orcs, of course. And yeah, Thorin looking very Thorinly.
I think that this is going to be one of Jackson's strongest films because this part of the story plays on his strengths. It has the large scale, it has the increased emotional drama, it has that type of thing that just really shines out when Jackson makes films. And I think that this part is going to be one of his best films so far, especially since there's going to be a 45-minute battle scene, which could be really bad because of how long it is, or it could be really awesome because of the length. I imagine it takes a lot of time to show all the dynamics between 5 armies and all the stuff that happens in the books to get that to happen.
Yeah, I would say 45 minutes. That based on how Jackson does stuff, I would say that it would need 45 minutes in order to do that battle,
Hmm.
especially considering how massive and turning of a battle it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
this
have a
is
feeling that's going to be one of those things that, yes, it sounds long because it's 45 minutes, but all of a sudden it's going to be over and it's going to be like, oh my gosh, that was long. That was 45 minutes? Okay, that didn't feel like 45 minutes. I think it's going to be like that.
All right.
Yeah, I
And we
do have to
also
say that real quick that I I was kind of dreading this film because I really did not like the second one, but this trailer did get me excited, and it's because while it did show a few spoilers, which I wasn't happy about, it really showed Jackson's strengths in this trailer. Obviously, there could be a lot of stuff that we haven't seen that might change my mind, but right now I'm really excited for this film.
all right then. Then we'll go into part 3 of Eogro's series on I Once Was a Hobbit. This is the conclusion of this series, and I'm sure, though, that he'll have another series starting right after this. And he finishes off with the lore of, well, of a certain former hobbit that we all know and have some feeling one way or the other for, I'm sure. I can't say that we all love him because right?
Yeah.
Uh, all right.
That was
Let's
awesome,
go to
Hannah.
the question of the week.
God, that was an awkward. Yes, so the question I decided to come up with for this week was actually inspired by Bloodborne's article he wrote last week. I believe it was called "What Makes an MMO Good or Great." He mentioned something in there about what's the reason for a game to be massively multiplayer if you don't have great group content. So evidently, that sort of aspect of the game is very important, and that was actually what made me think about what you actually consider to be core important things to be playing an MMORPG in the first place. So the first question I came up with was, what is your actual definition of an MMORPG to begin with? Anna.
Yeah, so my definition of an MMORPG is just a game that is online that you can play with more than, say, 50 people. And usually it has level progression and things like that, but basically, usually it's just a social platform for players to be able to talk with each other. Um, that has some type of game mechanic that lets them enjoy the game together. And usually, if it's done appropriately, if they work together, they'll be able to get through things that they wouldn't be able to by themselves.
Okay. Bloodborne, what do you think?
So I pretty much lean on the fact that of the massively multiplayer part, just for the fact that that was my first real experience with an MMO was Lord of the Rings Online, and that's what made the experience so great for me was the fact that I was in this kinship with at that time was about 75 to 100 people, and it's like I didn't understand that it was actually a culture at that point, and it was something that was like living and breathing. It wasn't something that was really sandboxed and saying, okay, this is what you're going to do. No, I get to do whatever I want, and I can actually do whatever I want with other people who share those similar ideas and goals and things like that. Um, so that's for me. That's really what it boils down to for an MMORPG.
Mm-hmm. Sifis.
Well, this is a difficult question. I think my response leans more towards like what Anding said. Basically, a game environment where there are a very large amount of people for you to interact and complete whatever game mechanic it is together. Usually, the RPG part means that there's going to be leveling. So basically, leveling and lots of people, and usually some kind of story or background information and lore for the role playing aspect and all of that. So that's my really bare bones kind of definition, I guess.
Does anyone have any definition that maybe diverges from what's been said?
Not really.
Okay then. The next question is, what features of an MMORPG, like certain things that it has, would you consider core to it? Meaning it can't really exist without it. Otherwise, if it doesn't have these, then it can't be called an MMORPG in the first place. And also, what kind of features that are often included in MMOs would you say you could live without if they weren't there? Brax.
So as far as core features, I've thought about this a little bit really. The role playing aspect, so the RP part of the RPG, I think requires some kind of sandbox elements. And we've talked about, this is something that the blogosphere talks about all the time. What is an MMO? What is an MMORPG? I think you have to have some kind of system in place that the players can go in and do what they want to do. Bloodborne talked about this in his first answer a little bit. They have to have the freedom to come up with some things. Landmark is doing a good job with this right now. There's several other. The music system in LOTRO is a good example. But you also have to have some kind of progression, which is something that Sithra talked about in her first answer. So whether that be progression within the sandbox systems or whether that be some kind of a theme park element, the leveling, the things that we know throughout the story and the combat. Because if you don't have both of those things, I think people tend to get either lost in the sandbox and they don't know what to do, or they feel too hemmed in by the theme park aspects. So I think it's very important to have both of those when you're designing an MMORPG.
Well, that sounds more like what's needed for a successful MMORPG, not necessarily what brings it away from the definition.
It's just
Right.
what
But
Brax considers to be a core experience. Get off his back, Pine.
Yeah, just offering an opinion.
So, Brax, is there anything that is something you could live without?
That's a tougher one for me, I think. I guess, no, I don't know. I think for me, I am probably less inclined to do the sandboxy things, even though I just said that they're required, just because of my lack of time to get in and really putz around with that type of stuff. So for me personally, fewer sandbox stuff is not necessarily a bad thing. I tend to gravitate towards goals that are placed in front of me because then I feel like I'm actually playing a game. I come from, I guess a history of the old games that I started out on when I was a kid. There was always a goal to be reached, whether that be flipping the score back to 0 or clearing a board or whatever it was. So I mean, I guess I'm kind of goal-oriented, goal-minded when I play a game.
Pine Leaf, what do you think?
As for what's needed and what can be left out, really, I would just say that since it's a role-playing game, you'd have to be able to take on some role other than what you are in normal life. So therefore, I would say that it'd be hard for me to call it a role-playing game if you were playing yourself all the way through. Now, obviously, LOTRO, you're playing a hobbit or hero or something like that. And other than that, I don't see anything else that's going to be a major core thing. Now, there's certain things in there that I think in order for me to want to play it, I mean, the things like the music system and stuff like that are something in which gives you player use of it is more likely to make it successful, is more likely to make it fun. And that's sort of what important here is, because I would consider something an MMORPG, but my thing about, well, make a fun one is, of course, stricter and probably closer in line to what we got from Brax.
Hmm. As for the aspects you could live without,
As for what I could live without, well, I know that, well, some things, oh yeah, the biggest thing I can live without is PvP.
I'm thinking that's going to be a rather common answer because I've
Yeah,
seen it
Yeah,
mentioned in the
because
chat
it's,
too.
Yeah, from the
now I
chat, that's
know
been
that there
very
are some
common.
people for whom that is the most important thing you can have in an MMORPG, because they don't consider it fun unless you are going against people. So I do know that there are different people who have their definition on what makes a good, fun MMORPG.
Hmm. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I could do without crafting.
Yeah, I agree. RuneScape
I
ruined crafting for me.
Well,
Yeah.
I
putting
know
in
some people
crafting
like it,
just to
but
have crafting is probably the thing that makes it bad. If you have either a good system or something like that, then it's not too bad. But few get MMOs
yeah,
have a good crafting system.
yeah,
At
that's
this
the thing. It's
Even
point,
like I think unless you're gonna make some kind of really amazing, innovative, awesome, like mind-blowingly cool crafting system with a new MMO, just don't bother. It's just it adds
honestly,
complexity and random items that you gotta get rid of from your inventory, and yeah,
Lotro's crafting doesn't really feel that significantly important to what the game is.
yeah,
Yeah, the main thing is how bloated LOTRO's economy is gold-wise,
Oh.
and also the fact that most of the stuff that you can craft is not that much better than things you can get just from the landscape, let alone raiding and things like that, aside from legendary items like, first stagers and stuff.
I imagine that's what the Essence system partly aimed to resolve, is it adds something else into the pool that people can make and trade around.
That would be nice if that
yeah,
was.
I have a feeling it's not going to be that successful in that matter, since most people probably succeed well enough with regular quest gear, and unless you
Hmm.
want something very specific, the essence system isn't going to be big of a draw. You'd want the essence system if you want something that's unusual from what the standard item set is.
Or if you're heavy into min maxing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Okay, and we'll move into the last question here. Is that given the choice of having a single specific feature of an MMO, and without that one feature, that you would not be able to enjoy the game enough to stick with it, maybe pay money for it. If it was that one feature, what one would it be? I can probably imagine a few of these already, but Sifrith, you first, I guess.
some kind of social aspect, whether that means just talking and chat with people or group-based content. There has to be some kind of social thing happening.
Mm-hmm. Bloodborne.
I would think for me, it really would have to boil down to the story. If I'm not drawn to the um, or the lore or the world that already existed for that game based on the story, I'm probably not going to be that interested. Some of the examples I could give you, it would be, I've stuck with Lotro for the entirety of my 7 years of playing the game, and even when I wasn't playing, I still had an active subscription. Um, when I tried other games. So, for example, like I play Warcraft for specifically PvP purposes. I don't understand the story of Warcraft. I have no idea what's going on. I don't know who the protagonists are, antagonists are, and I don't care. Um, Guild Wars 2, the game was gorgeous to me, but I didn't understand what my purpose was. I didn't understand the story. um, and all the different factions and things like that. It was very complex. Same thing with Elder Scrolls Online for me. Beautiful game, complex story, lots of factions. Didn't really understand my purpose. So ultimately, things that I tried because of the aesthetics of the game were beautiful, but it didn't hold me because the story I didn't feel like I was really participating in.
Yeah, that's definitely something I can say for Rift as well when I played that game, because mechanically the game works great. The payment model is great, but I just didn't feel like I had a reason to be in that world. It didn't really feel like a place that people lived in. It felt like a game world. Whereas LOTRO kind of feels more organic than that.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's just the way it kind of felt when I was playing that game.
Story is definitely the most important for me, but it usually is the one that's most overlooked in MMOs, I would say, with a few exceptions like LOTRO and SWOTOR and some others. But in general, that's kind of the one that's usually neglected or not invested as much. And I mean, LOTRO kind of gets away with it because, they have this IP that they have to live up to. And, the Tolkien estate and Middle-earth Enterprises have very high standards. And so that kind of forces it to really focus on, creating this world and making it believable. And I don't think any other MMO has really had that kind of push to make it. And, in most cases, it's really just they pick one employee and say, do you know how to write? Write us a story, make this world. And that's actually how it starts usually. It's just the lore is usually an afterthought because they're just kind of creating the MMO behind mechanics and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the story seems like in a lot of MMOs is a way to get you to the end game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's
And I
why
think
people are so surprised when they come to LOTRO, and it's like, you don't have to rush to the end. You can just enjoy the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, in considering role-playing games in general, and it's even true with MMOs, is to me, well, some people say the real game starts at end game. To me, the real game is the parts before. Even in pen and paper, Dungeons and Dragons, I don't believe I've ever had a character that reached level cap. I enjoy playing at the lower levels more than at the higher levels.
At the higher
And that's
levels,
why
you
I like.
stop getting new cool toys. You're just kind of
Well,
stuck there.
yes, there is that also. But for me, what would be important then would be the ability to level. In other words, if leveling, or actually develop, I think is a better word than leveling, because, for example, you don't have levels, for example, in Eve or something like that, but your character still develops.
Mm.
And that's what's more important on there, is being able to develop your character and not have, and I don't know, just have this set end game where, I don't know, I'm not into big raids and stuff like that. So therefore, I like the stuff at the lower level better. So have something substantial down at that range.
I want to touch on something Zinger said in the chat. He talks about how he plays like various different modes, and each one he plays for a specific reason. So for LOTRO, it's social and exploration. Rift is the systems. Neverwinter is the combat. It seems to be more common now that especially with free-to-play and buy-to-play systems being more popular than the submodel, that instead of having an MMO that fits all your needs, it's more you play various ones at the same time, pretty much. You just, whatever you're feeling you want to do, you go into that game and you play it, then you go out and play a different one. MMO monogamy, I suppose you could call it, seems much less of a thing now at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's no longer that one MMO you play. It's now you play all these for different reasons, or you just play one because you haven't explored much or you don't like what you've seen in other games. So yeah, it definitely seems that way.
There's a lot of interesting conversations you can have around the changing landscape of MMOs, and I think one of the interesting things about what you just said is that it's really changed the way people treat the social aspect of the game. That's why people are now getting together on Twitter and on Anook.com and all these outside of the game sites, because the game itself, the social aspect has kind of been splintered to several different games. So it makes it a lot more difficult to enjoy that social aspect. You don't have that constant static group that you see every day like you used to when you were subbing.
That's kind of why I brought up in that article I wrote was the offline integration, and how, with the WoW Armory app, for example, you can be logged in and still talking to guildmates and seeing the calendar and be very, very much still involved with the game, even if like you were at work on a 15-minute break or on a lunch or something like that. You'd still have that time to what's going on. I need to know, um, and not having that. I think that's why you're seeing a lot more of that type of stuff where people are going to Twitter or any of those other areas, because they can still be involved in a community around a specific game or specific topic. And that's why that's important, because the community obviously does extend beyond, world chat or kin chat. It does extend out much further than that.
Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts, or we could move on? Okay, I guess Piney, it's on you.
All right, very well. Then we'll go into donations. We did not have any Patreon mentions this week, but we would love your support. And to help LOTRO players, simply go to the donations page where you can support the Players Alliance through Patreon. Andy, could you please talk about this, since this is a change from previous?
Yes, so you can still get mentions on the official LOTRO Players shows, and there's all sorts of other rewards and things like that, including the ability to guest on LOTRO Players news or adventures through our new Patreon page. And so basically, this seems to be kind of the popular thing that a lot of networks and things like that are moving towards, and so we think that we're going to as well. And so we have different goals and things like that, like giveaways on various sites and things like that. And if you've seen my Patreon promotion for my personal channel, then it's kind of the same thing, but now we're doing it for the overall Players Alliance.
All right, very well. As for feedback, we have no reviews through iTunes, but we do have a featured comment. And the comment this week, how about Draculetta?
Sure. Hold on one second. I just got back. Sorry.
Okay.
The feature comment you said?
Yes.
Okay, it was from DJ Pimp Daddy. He left a comment on last week's episode. He says, so after listening to this show in the car for the parts I missed live, I was caught with this bug of why wouldn't WB cross-promote the films and the game? After tumbling down a long rabbit hole of web searches and official press release statements, I have come to 3 sound conclusions. 1, the state of the feature film industry is in decline, while the cost to make and even show the films is increasing. I have heard this from my wife, who is a manager of Cincinnati's largest theater. She tells me that repeatedly that ticket sales are slumping, but I've never searched for the statistics on this. Their theater chain alone has cut 25% of their staff worldwide. Film studios are fishing more and more for those mega hit films, but after over a decade of filmmaking, it is more about stats like baseball. Somewhere knows exactly how much advertising versus return profit they make on everything. So they are maximizing their profit for the 3rd Hobbit film, or as I call it, Shadows of the Lonely Mountain DLC Season Pass 3. Number 2, while Warner Brothers Entertainment is the parent company of everybody, Warner Brothers Studio is completely separated from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment, of which Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment is a child of. So many nested levels of divisions within a global corporation. Anyone who has worked with a major company with segregated divisions as such clearly understands that they just don't talk or get along.
Oh yeah.
They all have a vested interest in making their own pile of cash for their stockholders, and cross division projects are just not worth the effort. For example, my wife's theater is owned by National Amusements Incorporated, which, if you follow all the way up the chain, leads to Sumner Redstone. Ultimately, he also owns a super voting share of CBS and Viacom, which owns Paramount Pictures. While their theater does show more Paramount Picture films, they still charge Paramount the same fees for promotions just as they do for Sony, Columbia, Fox Films, etc., and all other stuff. Indie art house level films are not given discount rates, even with the Viacom brand. Can't afford to advertise within the larger space. And finally, number three. Lastly, one can clearly find all sorts of articles about how the film industry is threatened by the surge of video game probability in the past few decades. I can see why, over a 100-year-old film, established studio would snub their nose at an annoying young cousin, even if that cousin is coming close to making more money now. Warner Brothers Studios, heck, even the directors themselves like Jackson, see the spin off industry as an enemy. The only way I could see them advertising during the movie previews is if Turbine paid for those spots. The advertising spots before movies half go to the theater chain, half to the studio that is showing the film. 95% of the ticket costs go to the film, so they concentrate mostly on that number, whereas the theater itself concentrates on advertising and concessions. And yes, before you ask, I do know, in fact, the actual cost of popcorn. 8 cents to make, then sold at 5.75. Sneak in food to the Hobbit.
So, I do agree with everything he said, aside from, sneaking in food to theaters. But
I believe it's against their official policy, but everybody does it anyway.
anyway,
Wow. We just learned something about Pine Leaf.
Yes, we
we
did.
No,
did.
I don't need at the theater, so it's sort of moot with me.
I do have a bit of rebuttal for this, though. The biggest one is that Warner Brothers Pictures recently partnered with Sony to be releasing all sorts of their films on PlayStation and partnering with them and doing all sorts of cross promotion and stuff like that. So they're not just out, to not get cross promotion or anything like that. Also, for like Batman and stuff like that, they did a ton of cross promotion between games and films. So I think that it's possible for them to cross that line. It's a lot of work, and I don't think that it would be worth Turbine's time necessarily to go through all that work. But at the same time, it really feels like a lost opportunity to be, cross promoting stuff.
All right, thank you. And now we'll go into emails. Barnabas sent us their sixth origin story. And this one is dedicated to Lily Kate. You are not forgotten. Barnabas. One fine evening, Lily Kate was enjoying her favorite wine as she read all the wonderful articles on LOTROplayers.com. Her face turned red and she spit out the wine in her mouth. You can turn into a bear? She shouted. She continued to read and her face turned glum. But I don't want to be a big hairy man. I'm a hobbit. A proud Buggins, she declared. There had to be a way to make this happen. She turned to the one person that might know the answer. Hello, Pine Song. I want to turn into a bear. How can I make this happen? She said in a soft London accent. Obviously, I didn't do a soft London accent there. Pine Song thought for a moment and then replied, I know a way, but it won't be easy. Oh, what is that? Asked Lily Kate. Down south, in the north of Italy, there is a mountain. It's called Mount Not Lore Appropriate. Inside, you will find a magic ho-ho that will grant you a wish if you impress it. Oh, responded a shocked Lily Kate. It's not what you think. It's sort of a pastry, like a Twinkie, explained Pine Song. Oh, Tinky! I know her very well, but I haven't been able to find her lately. I think she's behind the camera. No, 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 no. It's a magical dessert, not a person. All right. I guess I'll be off then. Will you like to come with me? Said Lily Kate. I can't, replied Pine Song. I have been I have to be here before the next origin story. Lily Kate gathered all her creatures and began the long journey. It was a harsh trip, and Lily Kate had many challenges. I would like to say that all of the creatures made the trip safely, but Lily Kate got really hungry.
Jeez.
She found the mountain and entered into a long tunnel. At the end, there was a large cavern, and in the creamy center was the ho-ho.
My goodness.
Gosh.
Lily
Oh
Kate
my.
was awed by the presence, and she knew she had to do something fantastic to get her wish. So she pulled out a very special instrument. Hostess lute. You have never failed me and were truly created by the ho-ho under the mountain.
Oh my gosh.
From
Wow.
the instrument and began to play the tastiest, most delicious song ever known. You have melted my chocolate exterior with that wonderful song, declared the ho-ho. Your wish is granted. Lily Kate was very excited and ran out of the cave. At once she mustered all her fury she could, and something began to happen. I'm transforming! I can feel it! Lily Kate shouted. It was true. She did change into her new shape. As, and as we all know, making wishes is a very dangerous business. This is not what I had in mind, she said, disappointed. Teddy bear, Lily Kate.
What I would like to know is how many ho-hos Barnabas had to eat to make this story happen.
Only on an extreme sugar high could you write a story like this, Cyprian.
And everybody outside the U.S. is going, "What are they talking about?"
Ho, 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 green giant. No.
Wow.
What?
That was a
Now,
different,
really, that's a non-US
that's something else.
Now they're really confused.
I actually understood that one.
Oh, you actually understood the green
That's
giant.
surprising.
We get that advert here.
Regularly?
Not as often now, but we used to.
Enough for Thelros to know a reference.
All right,
That's
very
quite a
well.
lot.
You could contact us. You can email us at podcast@lotroplayers.com, and you can also follow us at Twitter. The Players Alliance at Players Ally, Lotro Players at Lotro Players, Andang at PVMP_Andang, Braxwolf at Braxwolf, Sithrith at Sithrith, Draculetta at Draculetta_72, Etheros at Etheros, Lily Kate at LilyKateBuggins.TeddyBear, Mystery.
That's not true.
Okay, at Lily Kate Buggins at least. Mystery at Mystery XOX, and Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needles. And you can follow our guest, Bloodborne, at Bloodborne. The Player Alliance has 2 shows that go live every week on Mondays at 8:30 p.m. server time. We have DDO Players News, and at Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. server time, we have Lotro Players News. Server time is United States Eastern Time. You can join us for our live shows at lotroplayers.com/live. And you can also join us on Loungeable for Lotro Players Adventures each Saturday at 5 p.m. server time. Thank you everyone for listening. This is Pine Leaf Needles, and remember to skirmish responsibly.